When the ocean turns violent, even calm water becomes a battlefield between humans and the predators rising from below. From swimmers struck in an instant to sailors fighting back after a single wrong wave, these encounters show how fast the sea can flip from peaceful to deadly. Boats, boards, cameras, and research gear offer no shield when massive jaws break the surface with purpose. In this video, we'll dive into 6 terrifying tales of predator attacks in the open water. December 9, 2025 began as a calm winter morning along the rugged coastline. The sky soft with pale light, and the sea rolling in slow, steady waves. Adrian Hale, once a dedicated triathlete, returned to these waters often, hoping to hold on to a part of the strength and peace he once felt while swimming long distances. Early onset arthritis had changed his training life, slowing him down. But the ocean still gave him a sense of purpose. He moved through each morning with careful discipline, checking tides, reading charts, and tracking temperature changes on his smartwatch. The small shifts in the sea fascinated him, especially the unusual warm patches that often signaled increased wildlife movement. His sister Emily, a marine photographer, joined him that day. She loved capturing nature in simple, quiet moments, and she wanted new images of winter water patterns. She stood on a tall, rocky outcrop, her camera ready as she watched the bright reflection of the sun ripple across the surface. Emily knew her brother relied on these swims when his joints felt stiff, and she wanted to support him, even if she did not fully understand the drive that pushed him farther each time. The ocean looked peaceful, and Adrian slipped into the water with practiced ease. His strokes were steady, each one moving him farther from the rocks where Emily stood. The water felt cold but familiar against his skin. He checked his smartwatch again, noting another small temperature jump, but thought little of it. His focus stayed on his breathing and rhythm, trusting the sea the way he always had. Below the surface, however, the patterns were shifting. A large shadow moved with purpose, following the warm trail of fish drawn into the area by recent environmental changes. The deeper currents carried signals that larger predators often followed. None of this was visible from the shore, where the waves continued to rise and fall in their slow winter pattern. Emily lifted her camera, adjusting her lens to capture the wide blue stretch where Adrian swam. Through the viewfinder, she noticed something had changed in the water around him. A faint disruption, a quick dark blur far beneath him. She lowered the camera, trying to focus her gaze rather than the lens. Another second passed, and she lifted it again. That was when the movement became clear. From the depths, a massive shape shot upward with sudden force, its speed too fast to comprehend. The water exploded into spray as the great white burst through, lifting Adrian partly into the air. Foam and waves crashed outward in every direction, turning the calm scene into a violent rush of motion. Emily stumbled back, her camera still pointed toward the chaos, capturing each frozen flash in a series of rapid frames. The sea swallowed the disturbance just as quickly, leaving only churning water and drifting foam where her brother had been only moments before. The beach fell utterly silent. The water continued to twist in uneven circles as Emily stared, unable to process what had happened. The bright foam slowly thinned, revealing a wide patch of disturbed sea where nothing moved. Her camera hung loosely at her side, the strap slipping against her shoulder as her hands trembled. Every instinct urged her to search the surface, hoping to see a splash or a raised arm. But the waves offered no sign at all. The silence along the shore grew heavier, broken only by the slow crash of distant surf rolling in toward the rocks. People nearby stepped closer, their faces pale as they watched the unsettled water. Some shielded their eyes from the morning glare, trying to understand the sudden change from calm to catastrophe. Emily could barely breathe as she climbed down from the rocks, her legs weak from shock. She reached the edge of the water and scanned the horizon again, but the sea remained empty, hiding everything beneath its shifting blue surface. Emergency teams arrived quickly, their boats spreading out in wide arcs as they searched every direction. Crews leaned over rails, scanning for anything that might point to where the strike had carried Adrian. The boats moved with steady precision, but hours passed without any sign. Only the faint drift of churned foam remained as a reminder of the moment that had unfolded so suddenly. Emily sat on the sand, numb from the cold wind and the weight of what she had witnessed. Her camera rested beside her, its images capturing every second of the event with cruel clarity. She thought of Adrian's careful routines, his love for the sea, and his endless effort to stay strong despite the pain in his joints. Each thought cut deeper, turning the shock into a quiet ache that spread through her chest. As the search teams withdrew, the beach grew quiet again. A few people gathered small stones and shells near the waterline, placing them gently in a simple line along the sand. It was a silent gesture, a way to honor a life lost too fast. Emily joined them, setting a smooth, pale rock among the others. The ocean stretched before her, calm once more, hiding all the danger that had risen without warning. The day ended with the waves fading into dusk, leaving a place of stillness marked by memory alone. June 3, 2023 began as a bright, calm morning for Sophie and her brother Liam, who had grown up loving the open sea. They were raised in a coastal town where their father taught them to sail on small wooden boats. Over the years, they practiced together, learning to read wind lines, study cloud movements, and understand the ocean's moods. Now adults, they often plan long trips during summer, choosing wide stretches of water where they can enjoy quiet space and warm sun. For this trip, they had joined a small group sailing trip near the Azores, an area known for deep blue water and strong winds that could shift without warning. Sophie had always enjoyed these waters because they felt clean and peaceful, while Liam liked the challenge of guiding a boat through changing weather. Their yacht was small but sturdy, and both siblings were confident in its handling. As the day moved forward, the sea looked steady and safe. The group kept a slow pace to enjoy the open view while studying the far horizon for signs of cloud build. Sophie stood near the wheel, watching gentle waves rise and fall against the side of the boat. Liam checked loose ropes and equipment, making sure everything was secure. They felt no reason to worry. The air was warm, and the breeze carried only a soft push. Then, without much warning, the sky darkened. A fast squall swept down from higher clouds, pushing strong gusts across the water. The yacht jolted as the wind hit, tilting the boat sharply. Before anyone could react, the boom snapped under pressure, swinging violently with a loud crack. Liam lost his balance and slipped across the wet deck. The next jolt threw him over the edge, sending him into the open water with a splash that cut through the noise of the storm. Sophie rushed to the side, scanning the waves for any sign of him. Liam surfaced, trying to swim toward the boat, but the rough water made his movements uneven. The group hurried to toss ropes, while Sophie leaned over the rail, calling for him to move closer. The storm pushed the small yacht sideways, making the gap between them widen and shrink with each rough wave. As Liam fought forward, a sleek shape appeared beneath the surface. An 11-foot short-fin mako had been drawn in by the sudden thrashing and shifting noise. Its long body sliced through the water with fast, sharp turns. Before anyone noticed, the predator lunged upward with a violent burst. Its teeth cut deep across Liam's thigh, pulling him sideways and sending clouds of red through the clear water. The impact shocked the entire group. Sophie froze for a moment before grabbing the nearest rope again. Liam tried to kick upward as the mako circled, moving with quick, tight loops that showed its interest was far from over. The struggle had only just begun. Liam struggled to stay above the surface as the dark shape circled beneath him again, each turn carving a wide ring through the stirred water. His injured leg moved weakly, sending thin streaks of red drifting behind him. Sophie and the others worked as fast as they could, tossing ropes and flotation aids while trying to keep the yacht steady in the uneven waves. Every second felt heavier as the predator looped closer, testing the space with sharp motions that sent small ripples toward the boat. Sophie managed to push a rope within Liam's reach. His hand closed around it with fading strength, and the group pulled together, trying to lift him out of the water before the mako surged again. The storm winds pushed against them, but they leaned back with full force, keeping their focus on pulling him clear. The predator rose once more, striking the hull with a hard thud that shook the railings, but the movement gave Liam just enough time to climb halfway up the side. One sailor grabbed his shoulders, helping drag him fully onto the deck. Liam collapsed into their arms, shaking as water streamed from his clothes. The deep cut across his thigh bled heavily, marking the boards beneath him. Sophie placed steady pressure across the wound while another sailor hurried to bring medical supplies. The mako circled once more near the boat, but with no one left in the water, it soon turned and slipped back into deeper blue, leaving only a faint trail in its wake. The group moved quickly, wrapping the wound and keeping Liam still. Pain spread across his face, yet he remained aware enough to hold on to the side rail as they sped away toward the nearest support vessel. The storm began to pass, leaving calmer water behind, though the memory of the event clung to the air. By the time they reached help, Liam's bleeding had slowed under layers of bandaging, but the damage was clear. Emergency workers lifted him carefully, keeping his leg supported while they assessed the torn muscle. He was soon flown to a hospital where surgeons worked to stop the blood loss and close the long wound left by the mako's teeth. News of the event reached nearby ports quickly, warning sailors to stay alert in shifting weather. Sophie remained by her brother's side at every step, thankful he was alive. The accident faded inland over time, but for those on the yacht that day, the memory of the fast, sudden danger stayed sharp. a reminder of how quickly the sea could change everything. July 3, 2020. The sun rose slowly over the northern coast of Australia, casting pale gold light across a quiet oil rig standing tall above open water. Among the workers preparing for the day was Ethan Brooks, a calm and focused diver who had spent years learning how to move through the sea with steady control. He grew up near the shoreline and felt at home in the ocean. His work often took him below large structures, where he inspected metal legs and deep joints that supported the platform. Although the job could be tense, Ethan carried a steady confidence that made others trust him during difficult assignments. The maintenance team for that morning was small. Storms had passed through the area the night before, stirring up sand and loose sediment across the seafloor. The waves were softer now, and the sky was growing brighter, but the water still held dark streaks of floating debris. Ethan understood the conditions well, knowing reduced visibility could make diving more demanding. Yet the inspection needed to be done to keep the rig stable. So he carefully prepared his gear, checking each piece with practiced hands. One coworker remained topside to monitor his line and watch his descent. Ethan stepped off the platform and eased into the water, letting himself sink slowly while gripping the safety tether. The sea felt dense and restless after the storm, and clouds of baitfish swirled close to the metal legs of the rig. Their movements created flashes of silver beneath him, twisting and darting in groups as if trying to escape some hidden push from below. Ethan reached the targeted section of the structure, placing one hand against the metal as he inspected scratches left by drifting debris. The murky water shifted around him, brushing against his suit in gentle waves. He focused on the worn spots, unaware that the life moving around him had shifted in a far more dangerous way. The baitfish scattered suddenly, streaking away with sharp turns that cut through the water like sparks. Before Ethan could react, the sea erupted beneath him. A 14-foot tiger shark surged upward, its striped body rising with a burst of raw force that shattered the calm. The impact slammed Ethan against the rig, sending a shock through his chest as the powerful jaws clamped around his torso. The shark twisted violently, dragging him sideways while the tether strained under the sudden pull. His coworker on the platform grabbed the line, shouting for him even though the water swallowed every word. The predator's power was overwhelming. The force of each movement threw Ethan against the structure again, loosening tools on his belt as bubbles rushed upward in frantic bursts. The shark's grip tightened as it dragged him farther from the rig's leg. In seconds, it pulled him beyond the reach of the lifebuoy dropped from above. Waves churned as the creature turned, carrying Ethan into darker water. The entire attack unfolded with terrifying speed, leaving the surface calm once more as the shark disappeared below. The surface grew still after the violent moment passed, leaving behind only drifting bubbles and loose scraps of gear rising from the deep. The worker on the platform stared into the shifting water below, his hands trembling as he gripped the railing. The tether hung slack over the edge, no longer pulled by any force, swaying gently with each passing wave. The silence that followed felt heavy, weighing on every person nearby. Emergency calls were made at once, and others rushed out onto the platform, searching the sea for any sign of Ethan. The morning light grew stronger as rescue boats sped toward the rig, their engines breaking the quiet that had settled over the place. Every set of eyes scanned the water, hoping to see movement, but only scattered baitfish flickered near the surface before retreating into the gloom below. A rescue team entered the water and followed a thin trail of disturbance that drifted outward from the rig. The sea around them felt deep and cold, with sand and debris still swirling from the earlier storm. They found Ethan's body not far from the structure, gently floating upward from a darker layer beneath. His suit was torn, the damage severe, revealing the predator's relentless power that had struck without warning. The team carefully lifted him and brought him to the nearest vessel where medics prepared a space, even though they already understood the outcome. When the boats returned to the rig, the workers stood in a tight group, their faces pale as they watched the recovery. The day that began as a routine check had shifted into something none of them would forget. The officials later examined the area and marked the conditions as unusually dangerous due to the murky water and large schools of prey animals that had gathered near the structure. These factors made it almost certain that a large predator would be close. News of the event spread quickly among crews working on offshore platforms. Many spoke quietly about the risks of entering water near rugged structures where storms had stirred the currents. Safety officers reviewed procedures again, stressing the importance of avoiding leaning or diving in uncertain conditions. A small memorial was set up on the rig in Ethan's honor, giving his co-workers a place to pause and reflect. The sea returned to its usual rhythm in the days that followed, calm and steady, hiding any trace of the force that had taken him. Yet for those who witnessed it, the moment remained clear. showing how fast danger can rise in places where humans and powerful predators share the same space. On April 3, 2024, the quiet inlet near the sandbar greeted the morning with soft light and gentle air. Ethan Lau, a young nature filmmaker, arrived before sunrise, carrying his drone bag over his shoulder. He had grown up loving wild places and had spent years learning how to capture birds, waves, and distant shapes with simple tools. This inlet had become one of his favorite spots because it always felt peaceful, as if the water itself wanted to tell a story. A short distance from him, two field researchers prepared for their morning study. Tim Weller, steady and calm, had always enjoyed early hours on the water. His work often involved long days outdoors, and he liked how the slow-moving tide helped him clear his thoughts. His colleague Anna joined him regularly, and both shared the goal of learning how changes in the coastline affected local animals. They paddled their small boards toward the sandbar as the sky brightened, expecting nothing more than a quiet start to their day. Ethan set up his drone beside a patch of smooth sand. He watched the sun rise slowly over the horizon, casting warm colors across the inlet. With careful hands, he guided the drone upward, hoping to capture flocks of birds drifting over the water. The soft hum of the device faded into the air as he adjusted its path and aimed the camera toward gentle ripples forming near the sandbar. Tim and Anna moved across those same ripples, talking softly about their upcoming fieldwork. The water seemed calm, the surface steady enough to trust. Neither noticed the faint shift in the deeper blue beneath them. A small shadow passed under Tim's board, gliding with quiet purpose. In the early light, it blended almost perfectly with the water, making it nearly impossible to see. Without warning, the shadow changed direction. A juvenile great white shark, drawn by movement and nearby fish activity, surged upward with sudden power. Its body sliced through the water in a fast, dark blur. The first impact was violent and shocking. The shark struck Tim's board from below, splitting it cleanly in half. A sharp crack echoed across the inlet as the board pieces lifted and tilted, throwing him straight into the cold water. Ethan's drone caught the moment from above, his screen flashing with sudden motion. Anna saw the board snap and reached toward Tim as he plunged beneath the surface. Turbulent water swirled around him while he fought to pull himself upward again. The shark circled in a tight arc, its dorsal fin skimming through the foam and creating a wide, white curve just inches from Anna as she tried to reach her colleague. Tim surfaced, gasping, his arms thrashing against the strong pull of the shifting currents. He tried to steady himself, kicking against the sudden drag beneath him. The shark moved again, slower now but purposeful, creating a wide ring around the two researchers. Seconds stretched unbearably long as they clung to the broken pieces, waiting for the next movement. Tim held tightly to the broken board pieces as the water around him kept shifting in wide circles. The young shark continued to move in slow arcs, its fin rising and dipping as if testing the space. Each pass sent small waves toward Tim and Anna, pushing them farther from the steady spot where they had started. Tim tried to keep his body flat on the surface, knowing that sudden motion could draw the predator in again. Anna kept close beside him, gripping the floating fragments with firm hands. Both felt the weight of fear pressing heavily on their shoulders as the inlet changed from calm to unpredictable. Ethan watched everything through the drone's camera, his heart pounding. He lowered the drone slightly to keep a clearer view. From above, the scene looked even more frightening. The shark carved smooth lines through the darker water, each turn creating a pale band of foam around the two researchers. Tim struggled to keep his breathing steady. He felt the pull of the tide push against his legs each time the shark passed. The broken board beneath his chest shook from the movement, making it harder to stay still. For a brief moment, the shark slowed. Its fin dipped lower and the wide circle tightened. Tim felt a strong shift in the water as the predator glided very close to his right side. A brush of cool water against his arm made him tense. Anna adjusted her grip and pressed herself against the larger piece of the board, using her weight to help support him. Every second felt stretched, heavy, and filled with the fear of another sudden strike. The shark then drifted outward, moving toward deeper water. Both researchers stayed still, waiting to see if it would return. The water around them settled slightly, though the sharp memory of the strike remained clear in their minds. Tim felt a deep ache in his shoulder from hitting the water so hard. Anna's fingers trembled as she held the board steady. They watched the last faint shape beneath the surface vanish into darker blue. Ethan kept the drone focused on them until he was sure the shark had moved far enough away. He then guided the device back toward the shore, running to grab rescue equipment from the inlet edge. Tim and Anna slowly began paddling with their hands, using the pieces of the broken board to stay afloat. They made slow, uneven progress, letting the soft pull of the tide move them toward shallow ground. When Ethan reached them with a rope, he carefully extended it. The two exhausted researchers gripped it and allowed him to guide them toward the sandbar. Their arms shook from strain, and their breaths came in uneven bursts. Once they reached knee-deep water, they steadied themselves and stumbled toward solid ground. Tim collapsed to one knee, overwhelmed by the sudden quiet after all the movement. Anna helped him stand, her chest rising and falling quickly as she looked back at the inlet. Ethan placed the landed drone carefully beside his bag. He supported both of them as they walked farther up the shore. A deep stillness fell over the inlet as the tide flattened again. Only broken pieces of the board drifted in slow circles where the attack had started. Later, local officials examined the footage and confirmed that the young shark showed strong curiosity, along with feeding behavior triggered by nearby fish. The incident served as a reminder to researchers and paddlers that even small changes in the water can pose sudden danger. Tim and Anna carried the memory with them, shaken but grateful to be alive. The inlet looked peaceful again, yet the moment had marked them both, leaving a lasting caution each time they approached open water. On March 4, 2025, the cold dawn settled over the wide Alaskan coast as Captain Gideon Harris guided his small fishing vessel toward deeper water. Gideon was 52, calm-natured and known in the nearby harbor towns for his steady patience during long, difficult seasons. He had learned to fish from his father as a child, spending countless early mornings studying the tides, the winds, and the many moods of the northern sea, and years on the water had shaped him into a quiet, focused man who trusted routine and respected the wild forces around him. This morning, the air carried a sharp bite, and thin ice crusted the edges of the nets as Gideon's crew prepared for the day's catch. The crew had worked with him for several seasons, and the group moved with practiced ease across the deck. Gideon remained at the wheelhouse, steering the vessel through the restless waves while keeping a careful watch on the patterns of the swells. Even though the ocean was rough, he felt confident. The boat was sturdy, the crew skilled, and the catch already looked promising. The morning seemed ordinary, but the ocean had its own hidden plans. Far beneath the surface, a large orca moved through the dark water. The powerful predator followed shifting schools of fish, its huge body gliding silently below. Gideon had seen orcas many times during past trips, but always from a distance. They were respected and admired, and were never known to show aggression toward their vessel. As the sun rose higher, the deck crew began hauling in the first nets. The boat rocked gently at first, nothing more than the usual motion. Gideon glanced over the edge of the wheelhouse, watching his crew work while keeping one hand on the wheel. Then the water beside the hull stirred unusually, forming a deep swirl that caught the corner of his eye. He leaned forward, trying to see more clearly through the spray. Without warning, a massive orca surged upward, its enormous body breaking through the surface. The black and white form rose higher than the railing, blocking the sunlight for a moment before crashing down with immense force. The impact struck the hull so hard that the entire vessel shuddered. Spray shot across the deck, and loose gear rattled violently. The railing snapped, scattering broken pieces across the boards. Gideon grabbed the wheel with both hands to steady himself as the boat tilted sharply. The predator disappeared beneath the surface for only an instant before striking again. This time, the blow hit closer to the stern, causing equipment to topple and water to wash across the deck. The crew stumbled as the deck flooded, bracing themselves against the boat's rolling walls. Gideon felt the surge of adrenaline rush through him as he kept the vessel from capsizing, his focus narrowing to the controls in front of him. The orca circled once more, its dorsal fin cutting a dark path through the waves. Gideon could see the size and power in every movement, and he knew the danger was far from over. The giant predator moved through the rolling sea with slow, deliberate sweeps, its tall fins slicing across the surface as it prepared for another blow. The fishing vessel sat lower in the water now, its weakened frame creaking as the cold waves pushed against it. Gideon kept both hands on the wheel, steadying the boat while trying to anticipate where the huge body would rise next. The crew clung to rail posts and storage boxes, bracing themselves as they scanned the swirling water for any sign of movement. A deep shadow passed beneath the stern, and the sea rose in a heavy swell. Gideon felt the pressure shift through the metal beneath his feet. The orca shot upward once again, striking with astonishing power. The hull groaned, another section of railing tore loose, and more equipment slid across the deck as water flooded in faster than before. Gideon pressed his weight into the wheel, fighting the sudden tilt of the boat as the deck dipped dangerously close to the surface. The crew scrambled to secure loose gear while holding on through each jolt. Every new impact rattled their legs, sending sharp vibrations through every board and joint. The orca's movements carried a strange mix of force and intention as if testing what the boat could endure. Each strike created a spray that washed over the crew with freezing shock. The wind sharpened, carrying mist and foam across the vessel as the predator circled again. Gideon steadied his breathing, guiding the boat into a position that faced the larger waves head-on. It was the only way to prevent rolling. The cold air stung his face, but he stayed focused. The water churned behind the stern as the Orca made one final pass, nudging the hull with a slower, calmer push before turning away. Its shadow thinned into the deeper water, and the tall fin sank beneath the surface until only ripples remained. Silence followed, broken only by the sound of the wind and the uneven splash of waves against the damaged hull. The tension in the crew eased, but their limbs remained stiff, and their breaths came heavy from the effort of holding themselves steady. Gideon kept the boat angled into the waves, waiting several minutes to make sure the predator had moved on before speaking into the radio again to confirm the distress call he had sent earlier. With the danger fading, the crew began clearing broken pieces of railing and dragging scattered equipment back into place. The deck held pools of water that sloshed around their boots as they checked for leaks. The forward section of the boat groaned with each swell, showing the deep dents left by the massive animal. Gideon tested the controls carefully, making sure the vessel could still push through the current. As the boat made slow progress toward the nearest harbor, the crew felt the weight of what had happened settle in. They looked across the water, shaken by how quickly a normal morning had turned into a battle against a creature far stronger than anything they had faced before. The cold air filled their lungs as the coastline came into view, its dark outline a welcome sight. Once the vessel reached the harbor, workers helped secure the battered boat. Gideon stepped onto the dock with legs that trembled slightly despite his calm expression. The crew followed, tired but unharmed, grateful to stand on steady ground again. Later inspections confirmed extensive damage along the stern and railing, but no harm to the engine or lower structure. Word spread quickly among other fishermen, many of whom were stunned that the giant animal had attacked with such intensity. The aftermath left Gideon thoughtful and quiet. The sea he had known since childhood now felt even more unpredictable, its hidden forces capable of reshaping at any moment without warning. The experience became a lasting reminder that even the most skilled seafarers remain small in the presence of the ocean's true power, and that respect for the wild must run deeper than routine. On May 3, 2019, Isabella Cruz prepared for a quiet research dive along a bright Caribbean reef. She was a young marine biologist known for her patience, careful note-taking, and calm attitude underwater. Since childhood, she had been fascinated by the soft colors of coral, the slow glide of rays, and the swirling shapes of tropical fish. Her work often took her to remote reefs, where she collected data about fish movement and reef health. Most days were peaceful, and she enjoyed the slow rhythm of moving through warm water with only her thoughts and her clipboard. This morning, the sea looked especially clear. Sunlight sank deep into the blue, lighting up long patches of coral and sending narrow beams across the sand. The calm conditions made the reef feel open and safe. Isabella checked her gear twice, taking her time before slipping beneath the surface. Small fish shifted around her as she descended, forming silver streaks that broke apart and came together again with each gentle kick of her fins. She followed a planned route along a series of coral ridges, stopping often to watch how different fish groups behaved. Her movements were slow and smooth, her eyes moving across every detail she needed to record. Nothing seemed unusual at first. The reef was lively but peaceful, and the bright water allowed her to see far across the open spaces. Then, as she paused to adjust her notebook, a long shadow appeared below her. It moved upward steadily and confidently. A 10-foot hammerhead shark rose into view, its wide, strange head cutting through the light as it closed the distance. Isabella held still, keeping her body relaxed, trying not to draw attention with sudden motion. The shark circled once, moving in a smooth loop before approaching again. Its size and shape made it hard to judge exactly how close it was. Isabella felt a heavy thud against her leg as the shark bumped her with a strong nudge. The force pushed her backward, sending a cold rush of fear through her. She drifted toward a rock formation, trying to keep the reef at her back to avoid being surrounded. The shark looped around once more, moving faster this time. Its body twisted slightly as it passed near her left side, and she felt the rough graze of its skin scrape across her thigh. The sting spread quickly, and she felt a trail of warmth where her skin had peeled. Sand and tiny shells lifted from the reef floor as the shark swung past, stirring a cloud of fine debris. For a moment, the shark hovered at a distance, its tall dorsal fin slicing the water above its broad head. Isabella stayed pressed near the rocks, breathing slowly to keep herself steady. Then, without warning, the shark turned and drifted into deeper, darker water. Its shape faded until only the faint blur of its outline remained. With her heart pounding, Isabella pushed upward toward the bright surface, gripping her gear tightly as she rose. Isabella reached the surface with a sharp gasp, her chest tight and her thoughts scattered, but she forced herself to stay steady as she floated in the warm air above the reef. The sky stretched wide and calm, yet her body still shook from the sudden encounter below. She moved slowly toward her small research boat, each kick careful, as if the water itself still carried the weight of the predator that had passed so close. Her thighs stung with every motion, and the dull ache reminded her how easily the situation could have turned far worse. When she reached the ladder, she pulled herself up with shaky arms, pausing halfway as a wave of dizziness rolled through her. She climbed slowly with heavy effort, settling onto the deck and letting her legs rest, stretched out before her. Thin lines of red marked the scrape along her skin, and small bits of sand clung stubbornly to the raw area. She rinsed the wound gently, watching pale streaks drift across the deck before the water carried them away through the scuppers. The pain flared again, but it was manageable, and she focused on steady breathing until her heart settled into a calmer rhythm. As she wrapped her leg in clean cloth, the reef seemed strangely quiet around her. The gentle swells rocked the boat in a slow rhythm, but her mind replayed every moment in sharp detail. The rising shadow, the heavy nudge, the sudden scrape, the sight of the wide head fading into the blue. She had always respected predators, yet the closeness of the encounter left her with a new understanding of how narrow the space is between routine observation and danger. Even species known for cautious behavior could shift into sudden bursts of motion when exploring unfamiliar objects in their path. She rested for several minutes, letting the sun's warmth ease the tension in her shoulders. The steady breeze brought the faint smell of salt and seagrass, familiar and comforting. She reached for her notebook, finding the pages slightly damp but still usable. Her handwriting remained shaky as she recorded the encounter, listing the depth, the shark's size, its movement patterns, and the details of the physical contact. Each note helped her regain a sense of control, turning the frightening moment into documented behavior rather than lingering shock. After securing her gear, she started the engine and guided the boat toward the onshore research station. The ride back felt longer than usual, as if the sea itself stretched wider after the event. She kept her eyes on the horizon, scanning the water's surface out of habit, though she saw nothing more than shifting sun on the waves. When the shoreline came into view, relief washed through her, soft but steady. At the dock, colleagues noticed her uneven steps and helped her secure the boat. They listened carefully as she explained what had happened, their faces tightening with concern. Her wound was cleaned again and bandaged with more care, and she was urged to rest for the remainder of the day. Though shaken, she felt grateful the injury was minor and that the encounter had ended without greater harm. That evening, as she sat with a warm drink and watched the fading light touch the water, she reflected on how quickly calm seas could change. The reef she loved so deeply held both beauty and risk, and she felt a renewed respect for every creature that moved through its vast spaces. She knew she would return to her work, but she carried with her a deeper caution and a stronger understanding of the silent power beneath the surface.